Ratchet & Clank, Uncharted, Assassin's Creed, Angry Birds and another Resident Evil. All movies set to release this year based on video games, and that's not an exhaustive list, though they are the only ones with set release dates, so make what you will with that info. While this has rarely worked in the past, it appears people in film industries are still trying to cash in on the popularity of various video game properties. The first of its kind was obviously a massive success, retelling the story of the biggest names in gaming of the time, Mario, and Luigi Mario, the names of which totally aren't a terrible form of joke on the fact they're the Mario brothers, and is totally canon to the central series as confirmed by Sega, who set out to rescue Princess Toadstool from the mighty Bowser, rushing through colourful plains, skies and sewers reminiscent of the games. We saw the combination of all our favourite enemies and characters from the series, and even Toad and Princess Toadstool featured as major characters with incredibly deep, fleshed out storylines that really added something to their characters. It ended with a really cool twist too, finally revealing the origins of the Mushroom Kingdom and settled once and for all who Bowser Jr.'s mother was. No plot or subplot was left unanswered. While all of that was obviously absolute farce, as hopefully the clips playing in the background indicate, it still begs the question, why the fuck do people still make video game movies? I heard something a while back regarding it basically being a big money sink for the likes of Uwe Boll, since he could make his movies tax-free and largely paid by the German government from some weird set of laws or something. And if that's not true, we can just take the piss out of a dick of a director challenging reviewers to boxing matches because they didn't like his terrible films. Films which left gaping wounds in my memory for the franchises they systematically demolished using little more than flashing images and sound. But I digress. Video game movies are not good. At least there isn't a single video game movie out there that wasn't widely received as great. There, glad we can agree on that. Now some made quite the killing at the box office, like these guilty pleasures, and others that didn't do that amazingly, but seemed to be enjoyed and appreciated by at least some of the fans. But weirdly, despite all of these attempts at getting games onto the big screen, these days we're still seeing this movie-esque approach to game design, with film-like cutscenes and 3-act structure stories, occasionally some gameplay sprinkled in before you're wrenched into another 20 minutes of voice acting and motion capture. Final Fantasy games are basically movies at this point, so going into feature-length CGI film was probably the best way to go. Shame we still get a half-assed attempt at a game every now and then. Metal Gear Solid fell hard into this trap with all of their games, though in some ways I'm at least thankful they haven't caved and made a movie about it yet. While on PS1 and early PS2 it was pretty impressive being able to squeeze in a couple movies worth of voice acting and choreography to those relatively small discs and underpowered hardware, they did cause some suffering for those who thought they had bought an actual game. Don't get me wrong, I probably learned a fair bit about nuclear war and nuclear weapons by the end of Metal Gear Solid, especially when it goes in full-on documentary mode with Otacon's first big talkie scene and the ending credits discussing treaties and how many nukes exist in the world. But at the same time it starts to attract attention away from the game itself. I like to think there's a very good reason why I enjoyed the Special Missions expansion over the base game. I still love the base game, but the raw game-like structure of Special Missions, set in a variety of blocky, old-school virtual reality environments and high score lists, really helped keep the twitchy shooter in me hooked on playing, while the main game usually tires me out rather quickly with its thankfully skippable but ultimately tedious cutscenes. But with video games being as vast and story-filled as they are these days, I don't see the point in having movies based on them. A Metal Gear Solid movie just wouldn't make sense given that the game's already condensed several movies worth of cutscenes between playable areas. Back when it was on PS1, maybe I could see it just for the leap between low-poly model limits and real life, but considering the final cutscene alone of Metal Gear Solid 4 was basically a movie in its own right, including the final boss, which is basically a cutscene, and the game itself barely has 5 hours of actual gameplay content throughout, there's no point in it. And I'd argue that this creeps into the ones mentioned at the start of this video too. Assassin's Creed, Uncharted and Ratchet & Clank are already broad game series, each game sporting its own plot, cutscenes, dialogue, all the things that the films are gonna have. What seriously is the fucking point of these things existing as film? While I understand that not everyone is into playing games, it seems a bit strange to then condense the games into something that they weren't originally. I get that gaming is still in that contentious role as a time waster, where a video game is simply not as high an art form as movie making is. Clearly as gamers we should feel it a point of pride that our game world finally gets to join the ranks of Hollywood's greatest as a movie, because obviously that's worked out so well so far. But the important factor missing from the upcoming movies is the gameplay factor, the ability to decide on the main character's actions, to be able to complete challenges, the possibility of death and having to restart sections. These are elements that are missing from a film, and in my opinion inherently detract from the concepts the games are capable of dealing with. A character in a movie faces adversity, and you as a viewer witness that adversity. You witness the protagonist and antagonist from the security and safety of your couch. Take a game like Dark Souls, where the entire world is trying to pummel you into into no longer playing it, one of the defining concepts of the series. You're not just watching someone else face adversity anymore, you yourself are facing that adversity. You are the one getting stronger, you are the one defeating the increasingly difficult challenges, you are the one that ties up the story, and you are the one that saves the world. Though Dark Souls ending's probably not saving the world and more starting off another cycle of the same story. See you in Dark Souls 4 that's totally coming out despite what the developer says, because I doubt their publisher would ever let a franchise as lucrative as Dark Souls stop. And though while I'm using Dark Souls as an excuse for showing off a game that has a very deep story but not the same film-like structure that most video games these days seem to be taking, maybe Dark Souls 4 will be a movie, just to drive the series into the dirt and let From Software work on another thing. Maybe something in the future with robots. If you like some video game movies, that's fair enough. I mean, hell, I actually really enjoyed the Mario Brothers movie. Did when I was younger, still do now. It's a better translation of the source material than these messes. Seriously, what were people expecting? Mario jumping on Goombas for 90 minutes?